Right, boys and girls and boys, attack helicopters, however you might identify. Who are we to say you're none of those things? Of course you are if you say so. Today my very special guest is Meghann, and she's going to tell us her story about, well, all of it really. From when she was born, the whole thing. We want to hear all of it. So I can sit back and go, tell us your story, please.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. My name is Meghann. So my story really started when I was about 9 years old. I was a very obsessive compulsive child. My parents had me in and out of therapy, and they decided to put me on medications at age 9. So that's where it all started. So when I was placed on medications, I started to gain weight, and I became the chubby kid. And basically had this undying appetite. No food it was never enough. So throughout the years, I was friends with everybody, but I was still like the fat kid. So that stuck with me my entire life. And throughout the years, I kind of was put on a cocktail of medications for OCD, depression, anxiety, ADD, ADHD, all of the things. So 16 years of age came around, and that's when I kind of started dabbling with fitness. And during that time, I started to get results. And I thought to myself, well, because the medications made me feel so stupid. Learning was so hard for me. I was kind of like a walking zombie. And I thought to myself, well, if I don't have anything to offer the world, maybe I could just be pretty. And so I got into fitness, started feeling really good. And then I kind of started dabbling with bulimic behaviors. But at the time, I didn't look at them as sick. So fast forward things, about age 20, I got pregnant. During my pregnancy, I gained a significant amount of weight. After I gave birth to my daughter, I was 200 pounds after giving birth. So yeah, and I'm 5'3", so I'm not very tall. So got back in the gym, vigorous exercise. So not only was I dealing with a fitness addiction, I was also dealing with some bulimic behaviors and food addiction. The food addiction, I didn't even look at the food addiction as food addiction at the time. But throughout the years, it kind of started to manifest, but it wasn't like, anything I was really worrying about. So age 25 came along, and I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of, being a slave to big pharma and orange pill bottles. And I started to think, well, you know what? Maybe these medications are actually making me way worse. I was anxious all of the time, depressed. I swear to God that if I had gone to an actual therapist, they probably would have diagnosed me as bipolar because my moods were like this. And so I had a friend who encouraged me to get off the medications. And I thought he was out of his mind because I thought that this was my life. Like, I didn't know who I was without being drugged. I listened to my doctor my whole life because I didn't know any better. And so I found this book. It was called Anatomy of an Epidemic. And that was really the game changer for me. It was basically just about how we're an overprescribed nation and how it's killing us, basically. So found this book, and I cold turkeyed off of the 3 different medications. And I don't ever recommend anybody to cold turkey off of these medications because it can really, really hurt you. And so by doing that, I went into 5 years of psychiatric drug withdrawal from cold turkeying. I didn't want anything to do with my doctor. So yeah, I was going through these really rough years of psychiatric drug withdrawal, I also felt a sense of freedom. And I was still, at the time, I was struggling with food addiction still. It was manifesting. It was getting worse. During this time, I'm also pursuing a career in the fire service. And I had gotten my personal training certification, and I was doing all of these things. And although I felt alive and moving forward, and I wasn't being held back as much anymore from the drugs, I was still struggling a bit. So, long story short, finally I was just about to start my career in the fire service when I had done a training burn. And I had gotten done with that training burn, and I had gone on the most insane binge of eating. And I would binge and purge, binge and purge, binge and purge. And that night came around, and I remember standing in the bathroom with my heart palpitating and my world spinning. And I was thinking to myself, you're going to die if you don't get your shit together, because my food addiction was that bad. And from the outside looking in, if you were to look at me, you'd be like, oh, this girl's fit. She's got, her shit together. She's healthy. But I was so far from healthy. So my parents had been living the ketogenic lifestyle. And I used to make fun of them all of the time because I was like, you need carbs and all of that, like, so many people say. And I had watched my dad reverse his type 2 diabetes, lost 100 pounds. My mother, who had struggled with mental health issues, she had been living that way for a while, and they had totally transformed their lives. So I was like, you know what? I think they're onto something. And so they sold me. So I started with the ketogenic lifestyle, and that saved my life. It saved my life from my food addiction in all aspects. And I did. I felt a huge sense of freedom. So I joined the fire service, and 2 months into my career, I had a traumatic brain injury on the job that ended up taking my entire career from me. So then I dialed in that much deeper into keto. And I don't like calling, it keto, call it low carb, proper human diet, meat-based, whatever it is. I would say that I am more meat-based, but I think that there is so much healing to be said that comes with a meat-based diet. And I can't imagine how much worse off I would have been if I wasn't already eating a low inflammatory diet. So after that had happened, my, life was in shambles, and I had to kind of figure out what the hell I was doing with my life now that my short career was over. So I launched my own business, Brain, Body, and Beyond. And now I'm coaching people basically how to eat real food, holding their hands into the ketogenic lifestyle, because I'm sure, you're in this space and you see so many people, preach certain things. And I think a lot of people think they're eating healthy when they're not. And so that's where I'm at now. And I think that, food has an ability to change and save so many lives the way that it did for me.
Awesome. So what are your thoughts on those who promote a fully carnivorous diet and say no plants whatsoever, and all of that? Are we mad? Are we dogmatists? Tell me all about it.
You know what? I think you have to find what works for you. Okay. So I went through that phase, where I was like, oh my God, plants are going to kill you. But I like plants still, and plants do not hurt me. They don't hurt me. I try to eat seasonally, organic. It's hard to eat, where I live, buying from the farm all the time in the sense of like vegetables. But I think I'm not saying those people are wrong, I think you have to find what works for you. I don't think plants are hurting me personally. I do believe that pesticides and herbicides and the way that our plants are grown these days can definitely, they're not the same things, the same plants that our ancestors were eating years ago. That's for sure, in terms of nutrient density. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand on that? Are you 100%? You're like 100% carnivore, right?
No, I do periods where I go 100% carnivore, usually 90 days at a time. And what I find the benefit of that is that it tweaks my health status back towards perfect. If I've got a little bit of extra on me, it strips that right off. It drives my inflammation down to near zero, which is a good thing. And it's a good kind of, almost like a meditative thing, almost like here's my period of, count the rosaries or whatever, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Most of the time, as a kind of fallback position where I normally sit for most of the year, I'm going to say it's 95% carnivore, because we use spices, rubs and things on the meat, whatever else, a few dried herbs, which you would call an herb, whatever. What else? Coffee's in my diet. That's down though. I was drinking like sometimes a dozen cups of instant freeze-dried coffee a day, and it was like, wow.
Oh,
you want to get jacked completely?
Yeah.
Try that. My blood pressure was through the roof when I was doing that, by the way, like 145 on 110 or something. Now I'm down to like 2 cups a day, and my blood pressure's normalized, 120 on 75, 80, whatever, which is perfect. So there's still some coffee, still some various herbs, whatever, and bits and bobs here and there. I would have the odd plate of blueberries with yogurt, fine, take my card. I don't, whatever. The thing about it is, like, in the carnivore community, the sensible carnivore community, there's none of this, we'll take your card off you, will point and laugh and say you never were a carnivore and you did it wrong, like some dietary factions will do if you don't adhere to their theological belief structure and all of that. Unfortunately, there are 1 or 2 loons that have snuck into the carnivore community and are saying really stupid things one way or the other, like too hardcore. If you don't eat 100% carnivore, you're not a carnivore, and all this nonsense, rubbish. And then on the other end of it, we've got this one particular loon who's running around, saying 400 grams of carbohydrates a day is great and you should do it too. No.
Well, what upsets me is some of these, big influencers, carnivore influencers who are, super meat based, but half of their diet is vegetables and honey. Mm-hmm. That kind of confuses me a little bit. Calling yourself meat based, I don't care what you're eating, whatever works for you. Great.
Sure.
But one thing that does upset me is I think some people who don't know how to be healthy, right? And they're following these people, and these people are type 2 diabetic and insulin resistance. And they're like, oh, well, so-and-so saying, oh, eat all the fruit. And I mean, it's probably making some people a lot sicker.
Yep.
Another thing that kind of upsets me in the carnivore space is, I think a lot of people seek the carnivore route is because a lot of them are sick and they have tried everything. Mm-hmm. So they go to the extremes of going carnivore, and some of them are still sick, and other people are like, oh, no, carnivore harder. You're just not doing it hard enough. And I think this is, not a good thing. And I can say that I was one of those people. Right now, I recently just got diagnosed with chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which is mold illness. Mm-hmm. And I did go very extreme and nothing was changing. And do I think food can heal many ailments? Yeah, 100%, but it can't heal everything. And so that's one thing that I've kind of seen in the space recently that's been a little upsetting. But I would always encourage to eat from the earth, because processed foods are killing us. They are so addicting. I mean, they literally engineer them to be addicting. So you keep coming back for more. And I mean, America is one of the sickest nations in the world, and it does not have to be like that.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. So processed things, manufactured things designed to be addictive, foods that are human inventions that did not exist even 150 years ago, like basically every single piece of fruit and vegetable that you could go to the greengrocer and buy, or the supermarket, or wherever you get that stuff from. None of those things are anything but a human invention, actually. Certainly pouring sugar down your neck, very, very bad idea, despite what himself will say about that.
Oh, wait, real quick. Let me ask you this question. How do you feel about influencers on the space that preach, everything in moderation and balance this, balance that? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I have several problems with it. First of all, balance is not what's required in the human diet, because human beings are an animal like every other animal. We evolved like every other animal in a niche, specifically in a nutritional niche. We have our strategy for getting our nutrition informed by, well, as human beings, about 350,000 years of existence, and prior to that, about 4.5 million, it seems, in forms that weren't quite human, but very nearly. And we haven't really changed our dietary behaviors very much in that entire time, except for about 11,000 years ago, when we suddenly changed completely for a number of reasons. And that was the second worst thing that human beings ever did, nutrition-wise, was to add a bunch of plants into our diet. The worst thing we ever did was extract oils out of seeds and put those in bottles and put a tick on them and say, this is good for your heart.
And say it's healthy.
Insane. Absolutely. I mean,
insane.
These are oils that originally were used for lubricating machinery. They are as pro-inflammatory as it's possible to be. Far worse than any sugar or carbohydrates could ever hope to be at their worst, actually. Anyway, that's for another day. What's really important for people's health span, lifespan, I don't just mean physical health, I mean mental health as well, the whole package, is that you live a life that's as anti-inflammatory as is possible. Now, for me, there are 5 things a person needs to do to achieve that. I've covered the first 4 on a video called In 5 Minutes or Less, 4 Health Hacks, and I'm on the thumbnail going like that to show you there's 4. Actually, there's a 5th one that I just didn't have time to cover within that 5-minute video, so I've left that one off. I suggest that people go and look at that video for the first 4 and adhere to all 4. They're not negotiable. I wish they were. In effect, number 1 is 100% carnivore diet. However, the caveat to that is what that means is as close to that as you can manage in your lifestyle personally. You will get a benefit from 100% carnivore above any amount of plant material. It is better. It is a lot better. But a lot of people are not prepared and cannot live that life. They cannot be that way because for some reason, food is a particular focus for them. Now, you're talking about having come from a food addiction background, so I absolutely understand that. And I would never say to someone like you just need to knock all those plants off and be 100% carnivore, just get your shit together and do that, because that would be completely inappropriate advice for me to give you.
But you know what? But with the carnivore lifestyle, I think I will tell you 100% when it comes to food addiction, I am so much better and so much freer when I stick to carnivore, because it's less decision fatigue. And I've noticed with myself, I don't do well with highly palatable foods. I could binge on anything. And I know for me, if I have a higher carb day, that's a trigger for me. The lower my carbs are, the way more smoother sailing. Now I'm like 3.5 years into my food sobriety. I haven't touched sugar in 3.5 years. I will never touch sugar again. When I say sugar, have I had berries? Yes, absolutely. But even then, if I have a higher amount of berries, I mean, that can even be a trigger for me. So I think the low carb lifestyle and carnivore works so well for food addicts is because, one, it's way less options. It's super simple. And I think the highly palatable foods are extremely triggering. And when I say highly palatable, I'm talking about berries. I am talking about sweet potatoes and, more starchier foods. And I think less is more for people like us.
Awesome. Yep. There is definitely an argument for those from an addiction background to be abstainers and not to be moderators, because the fact of the matter is we've already seen that the ability to moderate in someone that's addicted to anything is none. So you need to be,
Right.
it's kind of, it's a well-trodden path in terms of treatment of addiction. Not my expertise, so I'm not going to talk about that at any great length.
But I always compare it to this, because I do believe a lot of people have a hard time understanding food addiction, but I believe that it is probably a lot more people struggle with it than not, because we live in a, carb addicted world. But I truly think that, like if you compare it to an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
If you give an alcoholic one beer, it's not going to be one beer.
Right.
So if you were to give a sugar addict one cookie, like for me personally, if you gave me one cookie, it's going to turn into a box. It's going to turn into a box of cereal. It's going to turn into a pizza. And then I'm eating myself sick.
Yeah.
So abstinence is freedom.
Awesome. Absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, so just before we move on, it just occurs to me to be very, very rude and inquire of you. What age are you?
Okay.
What age are you?
Oh, I'm getting old. How old do you think I am? Can you guess?
Based on what you've said, I would guess somewhat older than what you appear, and that's kind of what I'm getting at here. I mean, if I didn't know and you hadn't spoken already about different things that happened to you at different ages and things, I would probably have said you'd struggle to be in your mid-20s. Now, I know you're older than that.
Oh, you're so sweet. I love you already.
Just how it is.
I'm 30. I'm 34 and a half.
Okay. All right. You're still.
But I will say, I'm still young. I just feel like I've lived a million years, but it's fine. But I will say the carnivore lifestyle, the meat-based lifestyle does kind of reverse age you. So I like to, keep it like that.
Cool. Brilliant. All right. So that's good. All right. So the first 4 of those anti-inflammatory hacks are on that video on my channel. Go and check it out after this. The 5th one that's not on that video because I ran out of time is exercise of the right kind, at the right intensity, on the right schedule, in the right volume. Now, I know this is something that you're interested in and involved in. So tell us about your exercise program. How does that put together? How does it work on a weekly basis? Give us a rundown.
Okay. Well, my background is I was a hardcore CrossFitter. I loved it. I was a fitness addict, I guess you could say. I think I was doing way too much. After my head injury, believe it or not, I had to dial things back a lot because of exercise intolerance. I was getting sick. My body was in a constant state of, fight or flight. And right now, while I'm overcoming mold illness, body is still kind of in a state of fight or flight. So I have to kind of try to manipulate things. So right now, if you really want to know what I'm personally doing right now, I'm doing a lot of walking and I do strength training 4 to 5 times a week from like 30 to 60 minutes a day, probably 5 times a week. I mean, I'm always moving. And I'm right now, it's pretty much lightweight and high rep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And that's working for you? That's achieving your goals that you want to achieve?
Yeah. Awesome. I try to do a couple high intensity workouts twice a week. My doctor told me I'm supposed to be doing these things right now because I do notice for me, it does set me back a couple days later because my body's so all over the place right now.
Okay.
High intensity is my jam. That's what I love to do. So maybe if I do high intensity, honestly, it's twice a week, 2 to 3 times a week, probably from 12 to 16 minutes. And it does the trick.
Nice. All right. So
what does it look like for you?
Well, for me, I am trying to get myself active again.
By the way, you're so chubby.
Yeah, I know. I'm so chubby. I know. It's incredible, isn't it? Amazing. Look, I've spent 5 years being basically sedentary because in order to set up a YouTube empire and to market the range of nutraceutical stem cell products that I'm involved with, and to consult with folks. They're the three things that I fill my week up with. I am sitting on this chair probably 60, 65 hours a week.
Wow.
And as such, the exercise fell completely off the program. Combined with, I'm now 51 years of age. That's not
wow, you look good.
Oh, thank you. That is not an excuse, by the way, at any age, frankly. You're only as old as whoever you're feeling, I'm told. I mean, however old you're feeling is what I meant to say, of course.
How old do you feel?
45. No, I don't.
Right,
I feel younger than that. No, I just made that number up completely out of nowhere. I don't know. I feel better within myself now, probably than I did even in my mid-20s, actually.
That's awesome.
My mid-20s was mid-20s to probably about 40 was a period of my life that was associated with a lot of problems, both physically and psychosocially, mental health-wise, as well as physically. And, now 10 years after I started doing something very meaningful about sorting that out, I'm now probably in the best health of my life, genuinely, actually.
That's awesome.
So that's definitely a win as far as I'm concerned. I do not feel like a man in his early 50s. I have to actually remind myself that's what my age is often, because it's like,
that's awesome.
What even is that? I mean, shit. Anyway, so that's where I'm at with that, basically. It's a matter.
How long have you been doing meat-based, like carnivore?
Gotcha. Okay, so I kind of decided to go the fully carnivore route. Probably, I often say it's about 8.5 years ago.
Oh wow!
I think
okay,
that's
so a
about
long
what it is.
time.
Yeah. Before that, I was kind of 23 or 4 years keto before that, and while keto improved some aspects of my health, it really didn't help with others. I still had a lot of problems through that period of time, and it really wasn't until, before I went completely carnivore, I came across the stem cell supplement that I'm involved in heavily marketing and talking to people about all the time now. That made a massive difference to a number of aspects of my health, because obviously stem cells are magics, basically. And then, so that was I started taking the product about 13 years ago. About 8.5 years ago, give or take, was when the carnivore thing kicked in. And at that stage, I went kind of maybe 90%. It's really only in the last couple of years that I've got 95 and above. And you'd think, well, that would give me another 10%. No, it's another 50, I think, on top. That tiny little bit of plant material is absolutely, the worst. So
okay, so not to interrupt you,
absolutely.
but I'm genuinely curious. So was it with the small amount of plants and then you taking them out? Where did you see the difference? Was it mental health? Was it physical? Like where? Or was it both?
My mental health's been pretty good for about 4.5 years. It's largely associated with quitting the occupation I had and deciding to be self-employed and do my own thing and look the boss in the mirror every morning.
Yeah.
And decide whether or not I'm going to shave. This morning it was no. And I said,
because you run the show.
I said, boss, is it all right if I pass on the shaving this morning? And he said, absolutely, you do it. You do you. It's good. You look manly. And
you look great.
Thank you. Yeah. So, that helped the last little bit of my mental health get together, stopping trying to be someone I didn't want to be and to please others, really, and to look after what I needed to look after for myself, but in so doing to actually help many, many more people, thousands of people.
I love that.
In a way that I couldn't actually as an academic. So it's been a vast bane in that regard. So there was that. But exercise, I'm just now getting to the point where I need to, and I'm ready. I've got the mental space and the energy to put my exercise program back in place.
Good.
Of course, about 15 weeks ago, I ruptured my Achilles tendon. that happens.
Okay, is that what I saw a video of you on your Instagram of like you were training something? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, so I'm rehabbing that and getting that back into usable format, and then my exercise program is going to be all very high intensity, burst and repeat activity, power training, bouncing, jumping, all of that stuff, and heavy resistance training, plus an amount of walking. The stuff for me that's absolutely no-go and should be no-go for everybody is everything in the middle. Sorry, microphone. That zone 2, that so-called aerobic, so-called endurance, so-called cardiovascular training, that's the stuff people ought not to do. You need to stay out of that zone completely. So walking, awesome. Distance walking, hiking up and down the hills. We've got awesome nature around here and, all of that sort of stuff. So strap on the boots and probably a weighted vest as well.
Yes, those are my favorite.
Yep. And then the heavy resistance stuff, the bouncing, the box jumping, the power training, the elastic band stuff. The X3 bar by John Jackish. There you go, got it in. It's great. Free weights, all of that stuff. At the moment, I'm pretty limited to mostly upper body stuff. Any lower body stuff I've got to be careful about this tendon. I don't want to redo it, obviously, because then that's another 15, 16 weeks to start again. So
yeah, no fun.
Yeah, that's my program. That's what I'm going to be doing. Watch the space.
But you know what? If I always tell people, if you can't work your lower body, you have an upper body. You know.
Exactly that. All right. So basically, that's it in a nutshell. Another opportunity to hear from another person who's had success by removing most, if not all, of the plants from her diet. It's clearly changed your life. Congratulations on getting the addiction thing under control. It's something I do understand. I've not had a food addiction. I've had other forms of addiction, and I know what's involved in getting rid of those or getting those under control. So well done on that. Great job. Thanks for being open. Thanks for sharing your story with us. Where do folks find you on social media to go and check out your shizzle?
Yep. So I am most active on my Instagram at Meghann.Alice, Meghann.Alice. So that's where you'll find me the most.
Awesome. We'll put that underneath so that people can click directly on it. I'll also put it on the screen so that those that are visual can go, oh, that's what it is. It's Meghann with 2 N's, Alice. Spelt the normal way, or do you need 2 L's for Alice? Because you've got 2 N's in Meghann.
Just 1 L.
Right. So Meghann, 2
I don't
N's,
know.
Alice, 1. Very, very good. All right. And under no circumstances, all of you young men that follow me, because my audience is mostly young men in their mid-20s to mid-30s, some of them up to about 40. Under no circumstances should you go and look at Meghann with 2 N's Instagram and see the pictures of her in Lycra and stuff. Don't do that at all.
No, do it.
Those are your orders. Stay away from that. All right, no, absolutely. Get across there. Get yourself followed over there. And thank you very much once again for your time. And
thank you.
And do keep in touch. In the meantime, we'll enjoy some Vivaldi, and I'll suggest that people should absolutely not do anything I would. See you then. Ciao for now.
Thank you.
Okay.